What if the door you spent your whole life trying to escape was the same door a dangerous man would kill to open in New Orleans under chandeliers bright enough to hide every sin in the room? A broke single mother named Clara Bennett watches her secret painting sell for millions. Her hands are shaking. Her rent is overdue. Her little girl is waiting at home. And across the auction floor stands Lucian Cross, a Mafia king with cold eyes and a past buried inside that canvas. This is not just a story about money power or forbidden love. It is about what happens when protection feels like a prison and when a woman must decide whether safety is worth her freedom. Stay with me until the end, because every locked door has a reason. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. That blue door did not appear out of nowhere. 3 weeks before Clara Bennett stood frozen beneath the chandeliers of a French Quarter auction house, she woke to the sound of rain dripping into a cooking pot on her kitchen floor. Not the romantic kind of rain that made New Orleans glow in postcards. This was the heavy kind, the kind that found every crack in a tired roof and every weak place in a tired life. Plink, plink, plink. Clara opened her eyes before the alarm rang. She always did. Her body had learned to wake before bad news could. The apartment was still dark except for the thin gray light pressing through the curtains. It showed the small room in pieces. A narrow couch with a blanket folded at one end. A table with paint stains that would never come out. 2 mismatched chairs. A stack of overdue bills held down by a cracked coffee mug. Canvases leaning against the wall like silent witnesses. Across the room, Maddie slept on a mattress tucked beneath the window, one hand curled around a stuffed rabbit with one button eye. Her dark curls were spread across the pillow, her mouth slightly open, her little face peaceful in the way only children could be when the world had not yet taught them the full price of breathing. Clara watched her for a moment. That was how she began most mornings, not with coffee, not with prayer, with proof. Maddie was still here. Maddie was safe. For now, that had to be enough. Clara slipped out from under her blanket and stepped around the loose floorboard near the couch. The old shotgun apartment creaked anyway because old houses in New Orleans had opinions, and this one complained about everything. She checked the pot under the leak, half full. Then she checked her phone. $42.18 in her checking account. Rent due Friday. Electric bill late. Daycare payment due in 2 days. A message from the landlord waited on the screen polite enough to be cruel. Clara turned the phone face down. She stood in the tiny kitchen and let herself breathe once, only once, before she opened the fridge. Half a carton of milk. 2 eggs, a heel of bread, peanut butter, 1 apple with a bruise on its side. She cut the apple into thin slices, spreading them across a chipped plate so they looked like more. She toasted the bread and shook cinnamon over it from a jar that had almost nothing left. The smell filled the apartment warm and sweet, pretending the morning was kinder than it was. Behind her, Maddie stirred. Mama Clara turned with a smile already on her face. That was another skill she had learned. Paint the smile before the child saw the fear. Morning bug. Maddie sat up rubbing her eyes with the back of her fist. Her rabbit fell into her lap. Are we rich today? Or pretend rich? Clara leaned against the counter and looked at the breakfast like it was a feast. Pretend rich. The fancy kind. Maddie brightened. Does fancy mean cinnamon? Fancy always means cinnamon. Maddie climbed off the mattress and padded into the kitchen in socks with holes at the toes. Clara lifted her onto the chair, kissed the top of her head, and set the plate in front of her. Maddie examined the apple slices. You made it like a flower. Only the finest restaurants do that. Do the finest restaurants have leaky roofs? Clara looked at the pot on the floor. Another drop hit the water. Some of the best ones. Maddie accepted that answer because she was 5 and because she trusted Clara to turn almost anything into a story. That trust was the most beautiful thing Clara owned. It was also the heaviest. After breakfast, Clara dressed Maddie in a yellow sweater with one missing button and braided her hair while the little girl hummed a song from a cartoon they could no longer afford to stream. Clara tucked the loose button side under Maddie's overalls so nobody at daycare would notice. Maddie noticed anyway. "Can I wear the purple dress tomorrow?" Clara's fingers paused. The purple dress was too small. Clara had washed it so many times the color had faded into something almost gray. Maddie loved it because it had once belonged to a neighbor girl who told her it looked like a princess dress. "We'll see," Clara said. Maddie turned slightly. "Mama, that means no." Clara laughed softly and kissed her cheek. "It means I'm thinking. You think loud." "I know." Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. Clara locked the apartment door twice, then checked it a third time. The lock was cheap. The neighborhood was not the worst in New Orleans, not by far, but Clara knew the difference between safe and lucky. They walked to daycare past houses painted turquoise pink and sun-faded green. Music drifted from somewhere, even at this hour, a trumpet practicing scales behind closed shutters. The air smelled like wet brick coffee, river mud, and fried dough from the corner shop Clara never bought from because even small treats had become math. Maddie held her hand and hopped over puddles. At the daycare door, she pulled Clara down and whispered with great seriousness, "When we get rich for real, can we buy a roof that does not rain inside?" Clara swallowed. "Yes, baby. And a dog. One thing at a time. A small dog. We'll negotiate." Maddie nodded like a tiny lawyer, then ran inside. Clara stood there after the door closed, just long enough to let her face fall. Then she turned and went to work. The restoration shop sat behind an antique store on Royal Street, a narrow space that smelled of varnish dust, old wood, and money passing through other people's hands. Clara spent her days repairing things that rich families had neglected and then decided were precious once they were almost ruined. She filled cracks in gilded frames. She cleaned smoke stains from portraits. She touched up chipped saints and water-damaged landscapes. She matched colors so perfectly that no one could see where the wound had been. Her boss, Mr. Cormier, was 70 years old, careful with praise and cheap with wages. "You're late," he said when she stepped into the back room. "I'm 6 minutes early. For me, that's late." Clara hung her damp jacket on a hook and tied her hair back. "What needs saving today?" He pointed to a frame on the work table. "Garden district piece, family portrait. Child put gum on the corner. Art crime starts young." He made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had lived a better life. Clara worked with steady hands. That was the part people noticed first. Not her face, not her clothes, her hands. They could take a ruined thing and persuade it to look whole again. By noon, she had repaired the frame, touched up a cracked oil portrait, and stretched a new canvas for a client who wanted something old-looking, but not actually old because old things required patience, and patience was no longer fashionable. At 1, the bell over the front door rang. Clara did not look up right away. Tourists wandered in all the time, touching things they could not afford and asking whether antique mirrors were haunted. Then she heard Mr. Cormier's voice change. Softer. Warier. "Mr. Graves." Clara glanced toward the doorway. The man standing there looked like he had stepped out of a summer magazine. Linen suit, brown leather shoes polished clean despite the wet streets. Silver watch. Smile warm enough to make lonely people careless. Elliot Graves. Clara had seen him before. Everyone in the small art trade knew his name. He found collectors for private pieces. He moved paintings between estates galleries and auction houses. He had a gift for making questionable things sound refined. He walked straight to Clara's table as if he had come for her all along. "Clara Bennett," he said. She wiped her fingers on a rag. "Depends who's asking." His smile widened. Someone who admires your work. That usually means someone who wants a discount. Mr. Cormier cleared his throat from the front. Elliot did not look away from Clara. I've seen the restoration you did on the Delacroix study. That was smoke damage and bad storage. It was resurrection. Clara did not like the way flattery felt when it came from men in expensive clothes. Too smooth, too practiced. Like a hand checking for the easiest pocket to pick. What do you want, Mr. Graves? He glanced around the back room. A private commission. I restore. I don't forge. I didn't say forge. No men like you usually don't say the ugly word first. For one heartbeat, his smile thinned. Then it returned. I need a reproduction, a study copy for a private collector. No signature, no sale, nothing illegal. Clara kept working. What painting? Elliot opened a leather folder and slid a photograph onto the table. Clara's brush stopped. The image was grainy, taken from an old catalog or archive. A woman stood before a blue door. Her back was turned, her hand lifted toward a place where a handle should have been. The blue was almost black at the edges. The gold light around the frame looked sickly and holy at once. Clara knew the style before Elliot spoke. Mara Wynne. The name moved through her like a note played in an empty church. Clara had studied Mara Wynne for years in stolen hours. Not because her paintings were famous in the simple way famous things were. They were not easy. They were not pretty enough for hotel lobbies or bright enough for collectors who wanted art to match their furniture. Mara's work felt like a room after an argument. Like a woman swallowing words because the walls had ears. Like a door that looked ordinary until you realized it had no way out. Clara reached for the photograph before she could stop herself. Where did you get this? Elliot watched her reaction with interest. Old archive. The original is believed to be in a private collection. Then ask the private collector for a reproduction. The private collector is difficult. That sounds like your problem. It pays $3,000. Clara's hand tightened on the photograph. $3,000. Rent. Daycare. Groceries. A real winter coat for Maddie before the weather turned. Maybe a plumber if the landlord refused again. Maybe one full night of sleep without numbers crawling behind her eyes. Elliot saw the offer land. He lowered his voice. I'm not asking you to sign it. I'm not asking you to age it. I'm asking for a study copy. A beautiful one. The kind only you can do. Clara looked at the woman before the door. What's the title? Elliot hesitated. The door he couldn't own. The words settled into the room. Clara felt something cold move beneath her ribs. Strange title. Mara Wynne had a flair for drama. Clara did not answer. She knew better. That title was not drama, it was a confession. Mr. Cormier called from the front. Clara, you taking this or not? She should have said no. She thought of Maddie asking for a roof that did not rain inside. She thought of the landlord's message. She thought of $42.18. When do you need it? She asked. Elliot's smile returned in full. 10 days. 2 weeks. 10 days. Then it costs $4,000. He laughed quietly, pleased by her nerve. 3 now. 1 after delivery. Half up front. Fine. He extended his hand. Clara did not take it. Send the contract. Of course. And no signature. No signature. And no auction. His eyes held hers a second too long. No auction. That evening, Clara walked home with Maddie under a sky the color of wet ash. She had $500 in cash tucked deep in her bag as a deposit, and for the first time in months, her lungs felt like they had room inside her chest. She bought chicken thighs, rice bananas, a small pack of cookies shaped like animals, and a cheap purple ribbon for Maddie's hair. At home, Maddie gasped when she saw the groceries. We're rich. Pretend rich with chicken. That's better than cinnamon rich. Clara cooked while Maddie colored at the table. Steam fogged the kitchen window. Rain tapped softly at the glass. For 1 hour, the apartment felt almost safe. After dinner, Clara set up the canvas. Maddie sat cross-legged on the couch with her rabbit. "Is that work?" "Yes." "Is it boring work?" Clara looked at the photograph taped beside the easel. "No, this one is strange. Good strange or scary strange." Clara mixed blue on the palette. "Both." Maddie considered that. Like Mr. Rizzo's cat. Exactly like Mr. Rizzo's cat. Clara began with the door. Not the woman. Not the background. The door. The blue took hours. Store-bought ultramarine was too clean, too bright, too obedient. Mara Wynn's blue had weight. It looked as if it remembered the bottom of the river. Clara mixed black into it, then green, then a touch of red. She scraped it off twice, started again, worked until her wrist ached and her eyes burned. Maddie fell asleep to the soft scratch of brush against canvas. At midnight, Clara stepped back. The door looked back at her. Not perfect. Not yet. But alive enough to make the apartment feel smaller. Over the next several nights, Clara painted after work until dawn threatened the windows. She learned the painting the way a musician learns a song by ear. The bend in the woman's shoulder. The tension in her raised hand. The gold line along the frame too thin to be decorative, too deliberate to be accident. The more Clara painted, the less the woman felt like a subject. She felt like a warning. On the fourth night, Maddie woke and wandered over with her rabbit dragging behind her. "Why is the lady sad?" Clara kept her brush in the air. "Because she wants to leave." "Then why doesn't she open the door?" Clara looked at the painted door. There was no handle. Maybe someone took it. Maddie frowned. "That's mean." "Yes?" Clara whispered. "It is." Maddie leaned against her side. "Can you paint one?" Clara almost said yes. She could have. It would have taken one small curve of brass near the edge of the blue. A simple shape. A way out. But a copy was a copy, and something in her understood that changing the door would be a lie. "Not on this one," she said. Maddie sighed with the disappointment of a child who believed adults made rules just to make sadness last longer. "Then make your own painting after, with a door that opens." Clara looked down at her daughter. The words stayed with her long after Maddie went back to sleep. On the 8th day, Elliot came to the apartment. Clara hated that he knew where she lived. She had not given him the address, only the shop. He claimed Mr. Cormier had passed it along for delivery details, but Clara saw too much calculation in his smile. He stood in the middle of her small room and looked around without touching anything. Men with money had a way of making poor spaces feel guilty for existing. Maddie was at daycare. Clara was grateful. Elliot stopped in front of the painting. For once, he did not speak right away. The copy was nearly finished. The woman stood before the door, her hand hovering her dress lost in shadow. The blue seemed to hold the room colder than the rain outside. Elliot's face changed. It was quick, but Clara saw it. Hunger. Not admiration. Not respect. Hunger. "You are better than I was told," he said. Clara stepped between him and the canvas. "I'm not done. It's remarkable. It's a reproduction. Of course. You remember the terms?" He looked amused. "Clara. Say them." His smile thinned again. "No signature, no aging, no public sale. No auction," she said. No auction. She did not believe him, but she needed the final payment, and part of her wanted the job finished so badly that she allowed herself to accept the lie because refusing it would not pay rent. When Elliot left, Clara checked the lock 3 times. 2 days later, she delivered the painting through the back entrance of a gallery near Jackson Square. Elliot met her in a private room where the lights were too white and the walls were too clean. He examined the canvas with gloved hands. Clara hated him for that. Gloves made it feel official. "You didn't sign it," he said. "I said I wouldn't. Good girl." Clara's eyes lifted. "Do not call me that." Something flickered across his face, annoyance dressed as charm. "My apologies." He handed her an envelope. Clara counted the money in front of him. "All there?" he asked. "Yes." "Then we are done." "Where is it going?" "A study room. Private collector. As discussed." "What collector?" He smiled. "The private kind." Clara held the envelope against her chest. "If I see that painting anywhere public, I go to the police." Elliot stepped closer just enough to remind her that the room had no windows. "And tell them what, Clara? That you accepted $4,000 to reproduce a painting tied to one of the most secretive artists in America. That you delivered it quietly through a back door. That you have no written proof of where it was meant to go because you insisted this stay discreet." Clara's mouth went dry. His voice softened. "I'm not your enemy. Don't make me one." She left with the money and the sick feeling that she had sold more than a painting. For 6 days, nothing happened. Clara paid rent, bought groceries, bought Maddie the purple dress from a second-hand shop window, a little too big this time so she could grow into it. She even bought a small tube of expensive blue paint she had wanted for 2 years, and then felt guilty enough to hide it in a drawer. The leak in the ceiling kept dripping. The landlord promised someone would come look at it. No one came. Life returned to its usual shape, but Clara did not. Every time a car slowed outside the apartment, she looked up. Every time her phone rang from an unknown number, she let it go silent. She dreamed of the blue door. In the dream, she stood before it with Maddie behind her, and no matter how hard she searched, there was no handle. On the 7th day, an envelope slid under her apartment door. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a cream-colored invitation printed in gold. Clara read the first line and stopped breathing. "The Bellefontaine Auction House cordially invites you to an exclusive evening sale featuring rare Southern Works private collections and the rediscovered masterpiece by Mara Wynne." Beneath the words was a small photograph, her painting, listed as an original. The title beneath it read, "The Door He Couldn't Own." Clara's vision blurred. She called Elliot. No answer. She called again. No answer. She left a message so quiet it sounded like someone else's voice. "You told me no auction. Call me back." He did not. She spent the next hour pacing the apartment while Maddie watched cartoons with the volume low. Clara thought about the police. She thought about lawyers. She thought about prison. She thought about social workers asking Maddie who took care of her when Mama was gone. By evening, Clara had made the kind of decision people make when every good option has already been taken. She would go to the auction. She would find Elliot. She would force him to pull the painting before anyone looked too closely. She put on the only black dress she owned, borrowed heels from the neighbor across the hall, and left Maddie with Mrs. Alvarez downstairs. Maddie hugged her waist. "You look pretty." Clara brushed a curl from her daughter's face. "I look uncomfortable." "That too." Clara smiled, but fear sat under her skin like a second pulse. The Bellefontaine auction house glowed against the wet street like a jewel box built to hide knives. Inside, everything smelled of lilies, champagne-polished wood, and wealth. Clara moved through clusters of collectors and donors, trying not to look like someone who had ironed her dress under a towel because she did not own an ironing board. She found Elliot near the bar laughing with a man in a navy suit. When he saw her, his smile faltered. Clara reached him before he could escape. "Pull it." "Clara, not here." "Yes, here." His hand closed around her elbow. To anyone watching, it might have looked intimate. It hurt. "You need to leave," he whispered. You sold it as real. Keep your voice down. You used me. You used me too. You needed money. Don't pretend poverty made you holy. Clara yanked her arm free. I have a daughter. I know. The way he said it made her stomach turn. Before she could answer, the lights dimmed. Guests moved toward the auction room. Elliot leaned close. Go home. Then he disappeared into the crowd. Clara followed the movement of people as if pulled by a current. She entered the room and saw the painting beneath the spotlight. Her painting, her fear, her mistake in a gold frame. The bidding began. 10,000, 50, 100. The numbers rose so quickly they stopped sounding like money and started sounding like a sentence being passed. Clara looked for an exit. Then the room changed. It was not the lights. It was not the auctioneer. It was the silence that moved before one man stood. Lucian Cross. Clara knew the name because everyone in New Orleans knew the name even if they pretended not to. He was spoken of in lowered voices near the docks behind restaurant kitchens in courtrooms where witnesses suddenly forgot things. He owned clubs he never visited and buildings that never carried his name. Some called him a businessman. Some called him a criminal. Nobody called him careless. He stood at the back of the room in a black suit, still as a blade. The auctioneer hesitated. Lucian raised one hand. The bid jumped. Clara's pulse climbed with it. When the number reached 3 million, Lucian walked to the front. He looked at the painting, then at Clara. And in that single glance she understood the worst thing about him. He did not suspect. He knew. This painting is a lie, Lucian said. The room broke open with whispers. Elliot tried to move, but 2 men stepped into his path. Lucian's voice stayed calm. Mara Wynne never used blue like this after 1998. Her pigment was mixed by hand, darker near the edge, meaner. This is beautiful work, but it is not hers. His eyes returned to Clara. It was painted by someone who understood the wound, but not the woman. Clara could not move. The auctioneer stammered. Collectors shouted. Security rushed toward the stage. Elliot vanished between bodies like smoke. Lucian stepped down and came toward Clara. Every instinct she had told her to run, but her borrowed shoes pinned her to the floor and his voice reached her before his hand ever could. Miss Bennett. Cold slid down her spine. I never told you my name. No, he said. You didn't. Up close, he was younger than she expected and more dangerous than the rumors had made him. His eyes were dark but not empty. That was worse. Empty men were simple. Lucian Cross looked like a man who kept a graveyard behind his ribs and remembered every name. He stopped an arm's length away. Who taught you to paint my mother's door? Clara stared at him. I don't know your mother. For the first time, something moved across his face, pain gone almost before it arrived. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His jaw tightened. When he looked back at Clara, his voice was lower. You need to leave with me. Now. She almost laughed because terror had made the world absurd. I'm not going anywhere with you. Lucian leaned closer, close enough that the noise of the room fell away. Then go home and wait for Harlan Whitmore's men to find your daughter first. Clara's blood turned to ice. The chandeliers blurred above her. The painting behind him seemed to breathe. Somewhere in the room someone shouted for the police. Somewhere else glass shattered. But Clara heard only one word. Daughter. Her hand moved before her mind caught up, grabbing the little silver cross at her throat, the one Maddie liked to hold when she was sleepy. Lucian saw it. His expression did not soften, but something in his posture shifted almost like restraint. Clara forced the words through her teeth. If you know where my daughter is, you better start talking. Lucian looked past her toward the exit where his men had already begun to close the room like a net. I know enough to understand you are out of time. Why would Harlan Whitmore care about me? Lucian's eyes narrowed, catching the lie before she finished breathing it. That, he said quietly, is the first interesting question you've asked. Clara stepped back. He did not follow. That small mercy frightened her more than if he had grabbed her, because it meant he knew exactly how to wait. She turned and pushed through the crowd, no longer caring who stared. Lucian's warning chased her through the auction house, down the marble stairs, and into the wet New Orleans night. The city outside looked the same. Gas lamps glowing, rain shining on the street, music leaking from a bar somewhere around the corner. But the world had changed its shape. Clara lifted her dress and ran toward home. Behind her, a black car pulled away from the curb without headlights. And somewhere across the city, inside a small apartment with a leaking ceiling, a child's stuffed rabbit waited on the kitchen table where Clara had not left it. Clara reached the apartment with rain in her hair and panic burning through her lungs. The hallway smelled like damp wood bleach and old cooking oil. Mrs. Alvarez's television murmured behind the door downstairs, a game show laugh track rising and falling like the world had not shifted under Clara's feet. She fumbled with her keys once, twice, then shoved the right one into the lock. The door was already open. Not wide. Just enough. A thin black line in the frame. Clara stopped so suddenly her shoulder hit the wall. Every sound sharpened. The drip from the ceiling inside. A car passing below. Her own breath scraping in her throat. "Maddie," she whispered. No answer. She pushed the door open with 2 fingers. The apartment looked almost normal. That was the worst part. The pot still sat beneath the leak. The curtain still hung crooked over the window. Maddie's purple ribbon lay on the table beside a crayon drawing of a dog with wings. But the room had been touched. Clara could feel it before she saw the details. Her sketchbook was open on the floor. The drawer beside her bed had been pulled out and pushed back in wrong. A muddy footprint marked the kitchen tile, and on the table, placed carefully beside the ribbon, sat Maddie's stuffed rabbit. Clara had left it on Maddie's pillow that morning. Her knees nearly gave out. She crossed the room and grabbed the rabbit with both hands. It felt dry. Clean. Arranged, not dropped by a child, left by an adult. A message. Clara turned and ran for the stairs. Mrs. Alvarez opened her door before Clara reached it, her face drawn tight. "Clara, thank God. Where is she?" "With me. She is fine. She fell asleep watching cartoons." Clara pushed inside. Maddie was curled on Mrs. Alvarez's couch beneath a crocheted blanket, her mouth open, one sock halfway off. Safe, warm, whole. Clara covered her mouth with both hands. The sound that came out of her was not quite a sob. It was something smaller and more broken. Mrs. Alvarez touched her arm. "A man came asking for you." Clara looked at her. "What man?" "Expensive suit. Nice voice. Not nice eyes." Clara's stomach twisted. "What did he say?" "He asked if you lived upstairs. I said no. Then he smiled like he knew I was lying." Clara moved to Maddie and knelt beside her. She brushed curls from her daughter's forehead, then checked her arms, her hands, her face, as if danger could leave a visible mark. Maddie stirred. "Mama, I'm here, baby. You came back." The words cut too deep. Clara kissed her forehead. "Always." A knock sounded upstairs. 3 slow hits against Clara's apartment door. Mrs. Alvarez crossed herself. Clara stood. Another knock. Then a voice from the hallway above, calm and male. "Miss Bennett. Lucian Cross." Clara's fear turned into anger because anger had edges and fear did not. She climbed the stairs with the rabbit clutched in one hand. Lucian stood outside her open apartment door, rain darkening the shoulders of his black coat. 2 men waited behind him at the stairwell landing. They looked away when Clara appeared, but not far enough to stop watching. Lucian's eyes moved over her face, then down to the rabbit. I told you they were coming. Clara stepped close enough to slap him if she lost control. Did you do this? No. Did you let it happen? His jaw tightened. If I had let it happen, your daughter would not be downstairs. The answer hit her hard because it sounded like truth. She hated that. Clara lowered her voice. If you know something, say it now. Lucian looked past her into the apartment. They searched for sketches, letters, anything connected to the painting. They were quiet, professional. Whitmore's people. You keep saying his name like it should explain everything. To you it does. Clara went still. Lucian noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him lived in the spaces between words. She turned away first. I need to pack. You have 3 minutes. My daughter is asleep. Wake her. I am not dragging my child into your car because you enjoy giving orders. Lucian stepped closer. His voice dropped not loud, not cruel, but heavy enough to bend the air. There are 2 men at the end of this block and another car circling from Dauphine. If you stay, they take you. If you run alone, they follow. If you call the police, someone in Harlan Whitmore's pocket answers first. I do not enjoy giving orders, Clara. I enjoy being right less than you think. For a second, the only sound was rain tapping against the stairwell window. Then tires hissed outside. Lucian looked toward the street. Now, Clara hated him. She hated Elliot, Harlan, the painting, the blue door. She hated the world for making the worst man in the hallway sound like the only door left open. She shoved past him into the apartment and grabbed a backpack. Clothes for Maddie, the envelope of cash, her sketch folder, a toothbrush, the silver cross her mother had left her, though she had not prayed in years. She hesitated in front of the canvases leaning against the wall. Lucian saw. 1. Clara grabbed the smallest canvas unfinished, a woman and child standing before an empty frame. Downstairs, Maddie blinked awake as Clara lifted her into her arms. Are we going home? Clara tucked the blanket around her. We have to take a ride. Is it a fire drill? Something like that. Mrs. Alvarez grabbed Clara's wrist before she could leave. You trust him? Clara looked up the stairs where Lucian waited in the shadows. No. Mrs. Alvarez's eyes softened. Good. Outside, the rain had thickened. Lucian's men moved first, opening black umbrellas and scanning the street. A dark SUV waited at the curb with the engine running. Clara held Maddie tight and crossed the sidewalk. A sedan turned the corner too fast. Lucian's hand came to Clara's back, firm but not pushing. He placed his body between her and the street as one of his men stepped forward and lifted his jacket just enough to show the gun beneath. The sedan slowed. For one cold second, Clara saw the driver's face through the rain-blurred glass. Pale, unfamiliar, watching Maddie. Then the sedan kept moving. Lucian opened the SUV door. Clara climbed in with Maddie on her lap. Lucian entered beside them, not touching her now. Cole Mercer took the front passenger seat, lean and quiet, with a scar near his eyebrow and a phone already pressed to his ear. 2 cars behind Cole said. Lucian looked through the rear window. Lose them before St. Charles. The SUV pulled away. Maddie's head rested against Clara's collarbone. Her small fingers clutched the rabbit. Who is he? She whispered, looking at Lucian. Clara answered before he could. A man helping us for tonight. Lucian's mouth moved faintly, almost a smile, but it did not stay. Maddie studied him with sleepy suspicion. You look like a funeral. Cole made a sound in the front seat. Lucian looked at Maddie. I have been told worse. Do you have snacks? Maddie Clara whispered. Lucian opened the compartment beside him and took out a wrapped granola bar. Maddie accepted it solemnly. Thank you, funeral man. Cole turned his face toward the window, shoulders shaking once. Lucian looked straight ahead. You are welcome, The city slid past in wet streaks of gold and black. French Quarter balconies, shuttered bars, gas lamps, the long shine of streetcar tracks. Clara watched familiar streets become strange through tinted glass. She did not ask where they were going. Part of her already knew. They turned into the garden district, where the houses stood wide and pale behind iron fences raised above the street like old secrets. The SUV stopped before a mansion with white columns, black shutters, and gates that opened without a sound. Cross House. Clara had heard the name once in the restoration shop. People spoke of it like a place that existed outside normal law. A house where judges had dined, musicians had played politicians, had begged, and enemies had disappeared from guest lists before they disappeared from the city. The gates closed behind them. The sound was soft. Clara still heard it like a lock. Maddie lifted her head. "Mama, is this a castle?" Clara looked at the mansion, at the lanterns glowing beside the door, at the men stationed beneath the porch roof. No baby. Lucian stepped out and offered his hand. Clara ignored it and climbed down by herself. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman in her 60s stood there, tall and composed, with silver hair pinned at the back of her head and a face that had learned to keep many secrets without losing kindness. "Mr. Cross," she said. Then her eyes moved to Clara and Maddie. "You must be freezing." Lucian said, "Mrs. Shaw, this is Clara Bennett and her daughter Maddie. They need rooms on the east side." Mrs. Shaw's gaze softened at the sight of Maddie. "Of course," Maddie whispered. "Does she live in the castle?" Mrs. Shaw smiled. "I keep it from falling apart. I like your hair. I like your rabbit." Maddie held the rabbit out a little. "He lost an eye, but he is brave. That is often how bravery works." Clara looked at Mrs. Shaw, then really looked. Warmth did not belong in this house, and yet there it was standing in the doorway. Inside, Cross House smelled of lemon oil, old wood, and rain-soaked stone. The floors were black and white marble. Portraits lined the hall. A staircase curved upward beneath a chandelier that looked like frozen fire. Maddie's eyes grew wide. Clara's chest tightened. Beautiful. Too beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made a person forget to check for exits. Mrs. Shaw led them upstairs to a bedroom larger than Clara's entire apartment. There was a bed with a white coverlet, a sitting area, a fireplace, and windows overlooking a courtyard full of magnolia trees. An adjoining smaller room had already been made up for Maddie with a soft blue blanket and a little lamp shaped like a moon. Maddie touched the blanket. For me, Mrs. Shaw nodded. For tonight. Maddie looked at Clara. "Can I sleep here?" Clara forced her voice steady. "Yes. I'll be right through that door." Maddie frowned. "Will the door close?" Clara crossed to it and tested the handle. "It closes. It does not lock from your side." Lucian, standing in the hallway, heard her. Something changed in his eyes. Clara did not care. She settled Maddie into bed. Mrs. Shaw brought warm milk with honey. Maddie asked 3 questions before sleep took her. "Are we safe?" "Yes," Clara said. "Are we rich now?" "No." "Is the funeral man mean?" Clara looked toward the open door where Lucian's shadow stretched across the hall. "I do not know yet." Maddie yawned. "Tell him not to be. I will." When Maddie finally slept, Clara stepped into the hall and closed the door halfway. Lucian waited near the banister. Clara walked straight to him. "Rules?" His brow lifted slightly. "You have not heard mine. I am giving you mine first." Cole, standing at the far end of the hall, looked interested. Clara pointed toward Maddie's room. "You do not speak to my daughter about danger unless I am present. You do not use her to scare me. You do not enter either room without knocking. You do not touch me unless I give you permission. You do not call this your house like that means I should be grateful. Lucian watched her without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Done." That stopped her for half a second. Then he added, "Now mine." There it was. Clara folded her arms. "You do not leave the property without an escort. Your phone stays with Cole until we check it. You do not contact Elliot Graves. You do not contact police. You do not answer unknown numbers. You paint in the South Studio starting tomorrow." Clara laughed once, sharp and humorless. "So this is not protection. It is custody." Lucian's face hardened. "This is survival." "No. This is a cage with better furniture." His eyes moved over her slow and unreadable. "If I wanted you caged, Clara, you would not be standing here arguing with me. You think that makes you sound better? I think it makes me honest." Clara stepped closer, anger rising because fear had nowhere else to go. "I have spent years staying alive without men like you." Lucian's voice turned colder. "Men like me are the reason you made it out tonight." "No. Men like you are the reason women learn to run." The words landed. For the first time, Lucian looked away. Not long, but enough. Cole cleared his throat from the hall. "We have Graves." Clara turned. Lucian's expression closed again. "Alive?" "Yes." Clara's stomach tightened. Lucian looked at her. "He sold your name to Whitmore's people after the auction listing went live." Clara whispered, "Why money? Fear. Those are usually the reasons." "Where is he?" Cole did not answer. Clara looked at Lucian. "Do not kill him." His face gave away nothing. "You think you get a vote?" "Yes," Clara said, "because he used my painting, my name, my daughter. If you kill him, you make it about you." Lucian stared at her. In the quiet rain tapped against the tall windows. Then he looked at Cole. "Keep him breathing." Cole nodded once and left. Clara did not thank Lucian. He did not expect her to. The next morning, sunlight filled the bedroom so gently Clara almost forgot where she was. Then she saw the carved ceiling, the silk curtains, the untouched fireplace, and the panic returned. Maddie burst in wearing her yellow sweater and clutching a biscuit in both hands. "Mama, Mrs. Shaw makes breakfast like a restaurant that has a roof." Clara sat up. "Did you say thank you twice?" "She said I could help with dough." Clara found Mrs. Shaw in the kitchen where copper pots hung above a marble island, and Maddie stood on a stool with flour on her nose. "This is too much," Clara said. Mrs. Shaw looked up from kneading dough. "Breakfast is rarely too much. You know what I mean." "I do." And Mrs. Shaw dusted flour from her hands. "And I have seen many people come through this house. Some wanted power, some wanted forgiveness, some wanted to be seen standing next to Mr. Cross. You look like you want a door." Clara had no answer. Maddie held up a crooked biscuit. "Mine looks like Louisiana." Mrs. Shaw tilted her head. "It does if Louisiana had been stepped on." Maddie laughed so hard Clara felt her own mouth soften. For one stolen minute the kitchen was warm. Then Lucian entered. The room changed, but not as much as Clara expected. Mrs. Shaw kept kneading. Maddie kept shaping dough. Lucian paused in the doorway as if he was not used to walking into a room where a child laughed. Maddie looked up. "Funeral man, do you eat biscuits?" Lucian glanced at Clara, then back at Maddie. "Yes." "Good. Mine is for you because it came out scary." Mrs. Shaw hid a smile. Lucian accepted the misshapen biscuit with unusual gravity. "Thank you." Maddie nodded. "You need breakfast. You look hungry and mad." Clara almost choked on her coffee. Lucian broke a small piece from the biscuit and ate it. His face stayed serious. "It is excellent." Maddie beamed. Clara looked away because the sight of Lucian Cross holding her daughter's ugly biscuit like a treaty did something confusing to her chest. After breakfast, Lucian led Clara to the South Studio. It sat at the back of the house overlooking a courtyard where rainwater shone on stone. The room had high windows, shelves of pigments-covered canvases, and a long table beneath a skylight. Everything an artist could dream of. Everything Clara had never allowed herself to want. In the center of the room stood an easel. Beside it, laid out with surgical care, were photographs, old gallery notes, pigment samples, and a sealed folder. Lucian placed a hand on the folder. The original painting is in Harlan Whitmore's private gallery. He will display it at his foundation gala in 12 days. Clara looked at him. You want me to paint another copy? I want you to paint a perfect one. For a theft, for a recovery. Men like you always rename crimes. Men like Whitmore rely on people being too polite to commit them. Clara walked to the table. The largest photograph showed the real painting in sharper detail than Elliot's copy had. The blue door seemed deeper here, darker. The woman's hand trembled near the empty place where a handle should have been. Clara touched the edge of the photo. Why does this matter so much to you? Lucian was quiet for long enough that she thought he would refuse to answer. Then he said, Mara Wynne was my mother. Clara turned. His face had gone still but not empty. There was pain there locked behind discipline so old it looked like bone. Her name was Serafina Cross, he said. She painted under Mara Wynne because my father thought art was a hobby, and Harlan Whitmore thought it was an invitation. Clara looked back at the painting. Invitation to what? To own what did not belong to him. The words entered the studio and stayed there. Lucian opened the folder. Inside were faded photographs of a woman with dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that looked painfully like Lucian's. In one photo, she held a paintbrush between her teeth and laughed at someone outside the frame. In another, she stood beside a younger Harlan Whitmore at a gallery opening, her smile brittle, his hand resting too firmly at her back. Clara knew that hand. Not the exact hand, the type, the kind that guided, claimed, corrected, the kind that looked harmless in photographs. Her fingers went cold. Lucian watched her. You recognize him. Everyone recognizes Harlan Whitmore. Not like that. Clara closed the folder. I paint the copy. Then my daughter and I leave. Lucian's eyes narrowed. When it is safe. No. When the job is done, Whitmore will not stop because you complete a task. And you will. That silence answered before he did. I pay my debts, he said. Clara looked around the studio at the expensive brushes and perfect light. This is not a debt. This is leverage. Lucian stepped closer, stopping before he entered her space. I can keep you alive. Clara met his eyes. Can you let me live? The question struck harder than she meant it to. Lucian's mouth tightened. Before he could answer, Maddie's laughter rose from the courtyard below, bright and unaware. Clara looked toward the window. Mrs. Shaw had taken her outside under a covered walkway, and Maddie was spinning with her rabbit in her hand. Clara pressed her palm to the glass. Lucian spoke behind her, softer now. I will not let Whitmore touch her. Clara closed her eyes. You do not get to make promises about my child like she belongs in your war. She is already in it. No, Clara said, turning back to him. She is in mine. There is a difference. Lucian held her gaze. Then slowly he nodded. It was not surrender. Men like Lucian did not surrender easily. But it was the first time he had stepped back without being forced. Clara returned to the table and studied Serafina's painting. I need the exact dimensions, canvas weight, pigment records if you have them, any restoration history, any letters where she mentions this piece. Lucian watched her shift from terrified mother to working artist. Her voice changed. Her hands steadied. The fear did not vanish, but it moved aside for skill. "I have everything we could find," he said. "Then bring me coffee and stay out of my light." One corner of his mouth lifted, black with sugar. Of course. And Lucian. He paused at the door. "If you ever use Maddie to threaten me again, I will burn this whole beautiful house down myself." His eyes moved over her face. For a moment, something almost like admiration warmed the darkness there. "Fair," he said. Then he left her alone with the painting, the rain, and the woman who had spent years standing before a door no man had ever meant to open. Clara painted until the rain became morning. The studio windows brightened by degrees from black to blue to a pale silver that softened the sharp edges of the room. Somewhere below, Cross House began to wake. Pipes knocked in the walls. A door opened and closed. The old house settled into itself like it had secrets in every beam. Clara did not stop. The copy on the easel was still only a beginning, but the door had started to breathe. She had painted many doors before. Front doors with brass knockers. Church doors swollen from humidity. Alley doors scarred by old locks. Doors in portraits. Doors in memories, doors that meant welcome or warning depending on who stood on which side. This one was different. This door was not an entrance. It was a sentence. She mixed the blue again slower this time. Lucian's pigment records lay open on the work table beside photographs of Serafina Cross as Mara Wynne. Clara studied the notes between brushstrokes. Serafina had not mixed color like a woman chasing beauty. She mixed it like a woman hiding evidence. Too much black near the hinge line. A green bruise under the lower panel. Gold scraped thin around the frame. Red nearly invisible beneath the woman's lifted hand. Clara leaned closer. There under the paint, almost swallowed by shadow, were tiny marks. Not decoration. Not texture. Initials. Dates. Her breath caught. She reached for a magnifying glass and held it over the photograph. The marks blurred, sharpened, then blurred again as her hand trembled. S.C.H.W. A date from 20 years ago. Another date beneath it, and a number written so small she almost missed it. A room number. The studio door opened behind her. Clara turned so fast her brush hit the floor. Lucian stood in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. He did not step inside at first. His gaze went to the fallen brush, then to her face. "You found something." Clara looked back at the photograph. She hid names in the paint. Lucian entered slowly and set 1 cup beside her. "I know." "No," Clara said. "You knew there were marks. You did not know what they meant." He came to stand beside her close enough that she felt the heat of him through the cold morning air, but not close enough to trap her. She pointed to the red marks. "That is your mother's initial. And Whitmore's. These are dates. This one looks like a room number." Lucian's jaw tightened. The Fairmont Hotel had old private suites on the top floor before the renovation. Harlan used them for meetings. Clara looked at him. "You knew that fast." "I know every place in this city where men like him felt safe." The bitterness in his voice was quiet. It had no performance in it. Clara picked up the brush and wiped the handle clean. She was not painting a memory. She was recording something. Lucian stared at the photograph. Or someone. Before Clara could answer, footsteps approached in the hall. Cole appeared with a phone in his hand and his coat already on. "Veronica Bell is downstairs." Lucian did not look away from the painting. "She came. She said she would not enter unless Mrs. Shaw stayed in the room." Clara noticed the smallest shift in Lucian's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Bring her to the blue parlor." Cole glanced at Clara. She asked for the painter, too. Clara wiped paint from her fingers with a rag. Lucian looked at her. "You do not have to sit through this." The offer surprised her. So did the fact that he meant it. Clara picked up her coffee. "If your mother hid something in a painting I'm being asked to copy, I do." The blue parlor sat at the front of the house where tall windows looked out over rain-darkened magnolia leaves. It was a beautiful room, all velvet chairs and old portraits. But Clara noticed the way Lucian stayed near the fireplace instead of sitting. Men like him did not like to look like they were waiting for answers. Veronica Bell stood by the window with her gloves still on. She was older than Clara expected, thin and elegant, with silver blonde hair cut at her jaw, and a navy dress that looked expensive without asking to be admired. Her eyes moved once around the room, counting exits the way Clara had the first night. Mrs. Shaw stood near the tea tray. That seemed to steady her. Lucian spoke first. "Thank you for coming." Veronica laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "I almost turned around 3 times. Why didn't you?" Her gaze moved to Clara. "Because I saw the auction listing, and because whoever painted that copy understood Serafina better than most people who claimed to love her." Clara did not know what to do with that, so she said nothing. Veronica removed one glove finger by finger. "I was 26 when I met Serafina Cross. I worked at a gallery on Julia Street. She came in through the back with 3 canvases wrapped in bed sheets and asked if we showed unknown artists." Her mouth softened at the memory. She was not unknown for long. Lucian's face remained still. Veronica looked at him. She was brilliant, not charming in the easy way, not social. She hated openings, hated collectors, hated people asking what her paintings meant. She once told a banker that if he needed the wall label to feel something, he should buy wallpaper. Clara smiled before she could stop herself. Veronica saw it and nodded. Yes, that was her. The smile faded. Then Harlan Whitmore came to a private showing. The room seemed to cool. He bought 3 paintings that night, then 5 more. Then he wanted to meet her. We all thought it was good fortune. A man like that could change an artist's life with 1 check. Clara looked at the tea in Mrs. Shaw's hands. The cup did not shake, but her fingers were white around the handle. Veronica continued. At first, Serafina tolerated him. Then she avoided him. Then she became frightened of him. He sent flowers every day for 2 months, bought paintings through other names, paid critics to praise her, then threatened to have them ruin her when she refused dinner. He offered her a studio. She declined. He bought the building where her real studio was and raised the lease. Lucian's voice was low. Why did no one tell me you were a child? I was her son. You were a boy standing behind adults who did not know how to fight a man with judges in his pocket. The words landed hard. Lucian looked toward the fire. Veronica turned to Clara. Harlan did not want her art. Not really. He wanted the part of her that made the art. He wanted to be the reason she painted. When he realized he could not inspire her, he tried to frighten her into making him permanent. Clara's throat tightened. That painting, she said. The blue door. Veronica nodded. Her last major work as Mara Wynne. She brought it to me herself. No frame, still wet at one corner. She said if anything happened to her, the door would remember. Lucian's head lifted. What did she mean I did not know then? And now Veronica looked at the photographs spread on the low table. Clara had brought them from the studio. These marks, these dates, these are not just symbols. Harlan used private rooms, doctors, lawyers, bank transfers. He made people sign things. He paid women to disappear from their own stories. Serafina found a way to keep records where he would never look closely. Clara stared at the blue door. Inside the painting. Inside the frame, Veronica said. Perhaps behind it. Perhaps sealed into the stretcher. She told me the door would remember, but Harlan bought the painting before we could move it. After that, the gallery stopped showing Mara Wynne. People withdrew. Reviews vanished. Serafina became a rumor. Lucian turned back from the fire. My mother died 2 years later. Veronica's face folded with grief. Yes. Did Harlan kill her? The question had no softness in it. Veronica closed her eyes for a moment. I do not know. Lucian stepped forward. That is not enough. It is all I can swear to. She opened her eyes. I know he broke the world around her. I know he made her afraid to leave the house. I know her doctors changed after he made a donation to the hospital. I know she stopped painting. And I know the official story was convenient for everyone except the child she left behind. Silence filled the room. Clara could hear the rain ticking against the glass. Lucian looked like a man holding himself still by force. Clara recognized that kind of stillness. It was not calm. It was containment. Veronica put her glove back on. There is one more thing. Lucian did not move. Veronica's eyes went to Clara again. Harlan had a daughter. Clara's pulse struck once hard. Veronica continued carefully. She disappeared years ago. There were whispers, a private scandal, a pregnancy, a family name wiped clean from every polite conversation. Clara set her cup down before she dropped it. Lucian noticed. His gaze cut to her. Veronica saw it too. The room held its breath. Clara felt the walls of Cross House closing in not because of Lucian this time, but because the past had found the room and sat down beside her. She stood. I need air. Lucian said her name. She did not stop. She walked out of the parlor, down the long hall, through the back doors, and into the covered courtyard. Rain fell beyond the stone archways. The air smelled of wet earth and magnolia leaves. Clara gripped the cold railing. Her body remembered before her mind could arrange the facts. A white mansion outside the city. A father's hand on her shoulder at charity dinners. A pearl necklace fastened too tightly at her throat. Smile. Clara. Stand straight, Clara. Do not embarrass this family, Clara. Then a pregnancy test hidden in a shoebox. A boy who took Harlan's money and vanished. A doctor who spoke to her father before speaking to her. A room prepared in another state where she was supposed to wait until the baby was born, and the story could be managed. She had been 19 when she ran. She had taken cash from the pantry drawer, her mother's cross, and a bus ticket under a name that was not hers. Bennett, her grandmother's maiden name, the only name Harlan had not thought to erase. The door opened behind her. Lucian stepped into the courtyard, but stayed several feet away. Good. He was learning. Clara wiped her face before turning, but he saw anyway. You are his daughter, Lucian said. It was not a question. Clara laughed once. The sound came out cracked. You say that like it belongs to you now. His face changed. Clara. No. She turned fully. Do not say my name like you found another hidden thing in the painting. He absorbed that without defense. What was your name? She almost did not answer. Then she did, because secrets had become another kind of cage. Clara Whitmore. Lucian's eyes darkened, but not with triumph. With fury. Not at her. That was worse somehow. He forced you out. He tried to keep me in. Clara looked into the rain. There is a difference. Lucian waited. She hated that waiting worked. My mother died when I was little. After that, Harlan decided grief was untidy and daughters were useful. I learned how to sit, how to smile, how to make donors feel interesting. I learned that rooms could be full of people and still have no exits. Her voice shook, but she kept going. When I got pregnant, he called it a contamination. He said I had damaged the family. He paid Maddie's father to disappear, then told me the baby would be raised properly if I cooperated. Lucian's hands closed at his sides. Clara saw the violence wake in him. Do not, she said. His eyes lifted to hers. I have not said anything. You do not have to. I can hear men planning war from a mile away. He looked down, breathing once through his nose. Then, quietly, What did you do? I ran. I became Bennett. I learned which jobs paid cash. I learned to paint other people's names because mine was too dangerous. I kept Maddie fed. I kept us hidden. She looked at him. And then your painting found me. Lucian's expression tightened at the word your. It was never mine. No. But you were ready to steal it like it could be. He flinched. Not much. Enough. Rain beat harder on the courtyard stones. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Every man in this story wants a woman behind glass. Harlan wanted your mother. Harlan wanted me. Elliot wanted my hands. You wanted my skill. You told yourself it was different because you were angry for the right reasons. Lucian looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket. Clara stiffened. He drew out a black key card and placed it on the stone ledge between them. Every gate, every exterior door, every room except the armory. Clara stared at it. What is this A key? I know what it is. Then take it. She did not. And if I leave, his jaw worked once. Then I follow at a distance until you tell me not to. Clara gave him a tired smile. Still a cage, just with a longer chain. Pain crossed his face, quick and controlled. You are right. She had not expected that. Lucian looked toward the rain. I do not know how to protect without holding. That is not an excuse. It is a flaw. The courtyard seemed to still around them. Clara picked up the key card. It felt absurdly light. This does not fix anything. No. You do not get forgiveness because you handed me plastic. No, you do not get to decide when I trust you. I know. She studied him, searching for the command hidden beneath the apology. She did not find one. Not then. From inside the house, Maddie's voice floated down the hall. Mama Clara turned instantly. Maddie stood near the kitchen doorway in socks, holding her rabbit by one ear. Mrs. Shaw hovered behind her, worried but not interfering. Clara went to her daughter and knelt. Hey, Bug. Maddie looked past her at Lucian. Are you fighting? Clara brushed hair from Maddie's cheek, talking loud. Maddie nodded. Then she held up the rabbit. Mrs. Shaw found a loose button for his eye. Lucian stayed in the courtyard, hands at his sides, as if he understood he did not belong inside that small circle unless invited. Maddie looked at him again. Are you still mad? Lucian's gaze moved to Clara before answering. Yes. Maddie sighed. You should eat something. Mrs. Shaw pressed her lips together. Clara almost laughed, and the sound nearly broke her. Come on, she whispered. Let's fix your rabbit. That evening, Clara returned to the studio. Lucian was not there. The coffee cup had been cleared. Fresh turpentine sat beside the sink. New photographs lay on the table, including one Veronica had left behind. It showed Serafina in the gallery years ago, standing beside the blue door painting. Harlan Whitmore stood behind her. His hand rested at her back. Clara stared at it until her eyes burned. Then she began painting again. Not because Lucian had ordered her. Not because Harlan frightened her. Because for the first time she understood the woman before the door. Clara painted the lift of the hand differently now. Not helpless, not weak. Suspended in the last second before refusal became action. At midnight, Lucian appeared in the doorway. He knocked once on the frame. Clara did not turn. You can come in. He entered quiet. I spoke to Cole. Graves is alive. That is a low bar. Yes. But he confirmed Whitmore paid him. He also said Whitmore asked whether the painter had a child. Clara's brush stopped. The studio air thinned. Lucian placed something on the table. A white box tied with a satin ribbon. Clara knew before she touched it that she did not want to open it. Where did that come from? Delivered to the front gate. Her fingers were numb as she pulled the ribbon loose. Inside was Maddie's stuffed rabbit. The real one. Cleaned. Repaired. Both button eyes replaced with perfect black glass. Clara looked toward the hallway where Maddie slept with the rabbit Mrs. Shaw had fixed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Beneath the rabbit was a card. Lucian did not touch it. Clara lifted it herself. The handwriting was elegant and familiar, a blade in cursive. A child should know her family. For a moment, Clara was 19 again, standing in her father's study, while he explained that love was what weak people called poor planning. The card bent in her hand. Lucian's voice was very quiet. Clara. She closed the box. No guns. His eyes hardened. He sent that to your daughter. No guns. He knows where she is. He knows where everyone is. That is his trick. Lucian stepped closer, then stopped himself. What do you want? The question settled between them. No order, no plan forced into her hands. Clara looked at the painting. The woman, the door, the place where a handle should have been. I want him to open his own cage and find us gone. Lucian watched her. Clara reached for a clean canvas from the stack. One copy will not be enough. His gaze sharpened. How many 3? Why she set the canvas beside the first. One for Harlan to believe he caught. One for you to believe you stole. Lucian's face went still, and the third, Clara looked at him then. For me. The silence that followed was not gentle. It was full of all the ways trust had not yet been earned. Lucian nodded once. Not pleased, not offended, understanding. Clara picked up her brush. From now on, nobody knows which door is real except me. Lucian looked at the blue canvas, then back at the woman holding the brush. For the first time since she had entered Cross House, he did not look like a man deciding what to do with her. He looked like a man watching her choose. By the night of the Whitmore Foundation Gala, Clara had painted 3 doors and trusted none of them. For 12 days, Cross House had breathed around her like a living thing. Men came and went through side entrances. Cole spoke into phones in clipped sentences. Mrs. Shaw kept Maddie away from the sharp edges of adult fear with flower card games and stories about haunted streetcars. Lucian moved through it all with the silence of a man preparing for war. Clara prepared for something colder. War belonged to men like Lucian and Harlan. It had rules they understood. It gave them permission to bleed in the name of memory, pride, family territory. Clara had lived too long inside the damage men left behind after calling themselves protectors. So she painted. One canvas carried the exact wound of Serafina Cross. One carried a flaw only Clara could see. One held a secret beneath its painted blue, a thin layer of paper sealed under primer copies of the first scanned documents Lucian had shown her, hidden where even careful hands might miss them. Nobody knew which was which. Not Lucian, not Cole, not Harlan Whitmore. That was the first thing in years that felt like safety. On the evening of the gala, Mrs. Shaw found Clara in the east bedroom, standing before the mirror in a dark green dress Lucian had not chosen. Clara had chosen it herself from a rack sent by a boutique, then made Cole return the rest. The dress was simple, long and close to the body, with sleeves that covered the small scars on her arms from years of restoration chemicals and cheap apartment repairs. Mrs. Shaw fastened the clasp at the back of Clara's neck. "You look like trouble," she said. Clara met her eyes in the mirror. Good. Maddie sat on the bed in pajamas, holding both rabbits, the old one Mrs. Shaw had fixed and the perfect one Harlan had sent. She had refused to sleep with the perfect one. It sat at the edge of the mattress like an unwanted guest. "Are you going to a princess party?" Maddie asked. "No," Clara said. "A grown-up party." "That sounds worse." "It is." Maddie slid off the bed and crossed to her. Clara knelt carefully so the dress would not crease. Maddie touched the green fabric. "Do you have to go?" Clara took her daughter's hands. "Yes." "Because of the blue door." Clara swallowed. "Yes." Maddie looked toward the hallway where Lucian's shadow passed and stopped. He did not enter. Is funeral man going? Clara almost smiled. He is. Tell him not to be scary. Clara looked at Lucian's shadow. I think scary is part of the outfit. Maddie frowned with serious disappointment. Clara kissed her forehead. You stay with Mrs. Shaw. Cole will be here too. Nobody comes near you unless Mrs. Shaw says so. Maddie nodded, then leaned close to whisper. If you see the sad lady, tell her we can make a door handle. Clara closed her eyes for a second. I will. Downstairs, Lucian waited in the front hall. Black suit, white shirt, no tie. A silver ring on his right hand. He looked less like a guest than a beautiful threat that had learned manners. His gaze moved over Clara once, then stopped at her face. You chose green. I chose everything. A faint curve touched his mouth. I noticed. Cole came in from the side hall, adjusting one cuff. Cars are ready. Staff is in place. Veronica is already inside. The catering entrance is ours for 6 minutes once the second speech starts. Clara looked at him, and Maddie Cole's expression softened by 1 degree. Mrs. Shaw has her in the kitchen, with enough biscuits to survive a flood. Lucian opened the front door himself. Rain had stopped, but the city still shone from it. The air smelled of wet leaves and river stone. At the car, Lucian paused before touching the door handle. If you want to stay here, I go alone. Clara looked at him. You cannot do this without me. I know. Then do not dress permission up as sacrifice. His eyes held hers. Fair. He opened the door. She got in by herself. The Whitmore estate stood outside New Orleans behind white gates and ancient oaks. Lanterns hung from the branches, turning the long drive into a golden tunnel. At the end of it, the house rose bright and cold, a monument to money that had learned how to smile for cameras. Clara had grown up inside that brightness. She remembered the marble stairs, the polished silver, the portraits of dead Whitmores with their clean collars and cruel mouths. She remembered standing at the edge of parties with her hands folded, while her father introduced her as if she were part of the furniture. My daughter, Clara. Not my child, not my girl. My daughter, as if the word meant asset. Tonight, photographers waited at the entrance. Donors stepped from cars in gowns and tuxedos. Politicians laughed too loudly. A jazz quartet played near the fountain, soft and expensive. Lucian offered his arm. Clara looked at it. He waited. She took it because she chose to, and because the cameras needed a story to swallow. The whispers began before they reached the door. Lucian Cross. Is that Harlan's daughter? I thought she disappeared. No, impossible. She looks just like her mother. Clara kept her chin level. Lucian leaned slightly toward her. Breathe. I am. No, he said softly. You are surviving. Different skill. She hated how well he could see her. Inside, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and white roses. Every table carried the Whitmore crest. Every wall displayed art Harlan had bought, borrowed, or trapped. Waiters drifted through the crowd with champagne. Men shook Lucian's hand while pretending not to fear him. Women looked Clara up and down with the polite cruelty of people who had never had to count groceries. Then Harlan Whitmore appeared at the top of the stairs. Clara felt him before she saw him. That had always been true. He was older now, but age had not softened him. It had refined him. Silver hair, perfect tuxedo, a face built for donor magazines and private threats. He descended the stairs slowly smiling, as if the entire room were already his and everyone in it had simply failed to notice the leash. His eyes found Clara. No surprise. No remorse. Only possession. He crossed the room through opening space. People stepped aside without thinking. Lucian's arm tightened beneath Clara's hand. She lifted one finger against his sleeve. Not yet. Harlan stopped in front of her. For a moment, father and daughter stood beneath the chandelier light, with the whole room pretending not to watch. "Clara," he said. Her name in his mouth felt like a key turning in an old lock. "Harlan." A flash of annoyance moved across his face. She had not called him father. He leaned in and kissed her cheek. She did not move. She did not close her eyes. She let the room see the kiss land on stone. "You have grown dramatic," he said. "You have grown predictable." Lucian's mouth stayed still, but Clara felt his attention sharpen. Harlan smiled. "New Orleans has missed you." "No. New Orleans loves gossip. There is a difference." His gaze moved to Lucian. "Mr. Cross, you bring interesting company." Lucian answered evenly. She brought herself. Clara looked at him then. The words were small. They mattered. Harlan noticed too. "How modern," he said. A waiter passed. Harlan took a glass, but did not drink. "I hoped we might speak privately." Clara smiled with all the warmth he had taught her to fake. "Of course. I would hate for witnesses to make you uncomfortable." Harlan's eyes cooled. He guided them toward a side gallery, not touching Clara this time. Lucian followed at a measured distance until Clara glanced back once. A signal. "Stay." He stopped. It cost him. She saw it in the set of his jaw. The side gallery smelled of lilies and old varnish. Paintings lined the walls, landscapes, portraits, religious scenes, all arranged to suggest taste rather than hunger. Harlan closed the door. Clara stood near the center of the room, leaving space behind her. Never let him stand between you and the exit. She had learned that at 16. Harlan studied her dress, her face, her bare throat. "You kept the cross. It was my mother's. It was in my house. So was I. You did not own either of us." His smile faded. "There is no need for this performance. That is what you call it when someone stops obeying." He stepped closer. "You have been living in poverty under a false name, dragging a child through unstable conditions, taking criminal work from men beneath you. You think that is freedom." Clara's hands stayed loose at her sides. "I think it is mine." He laughed softly. "You always had your mother's talent for turning bad choices into poetry." Clara felt the old wound flare, but it did not blind her. "Leave Maddie alone." There. The real conversation. Harlan's expression softened in the way a snake might soften before striking. "Madeline is my granddaughter. Her name is Maddie. She is a Whitmore. She is 5. She deserves security education lineage. She deserves to choose who touches her life." Harlan shook his head. "Children do not choose. Adults choose for them. Bad adults do." His gaze hardened. "You are emotional. I am accurate." For the first time, anger cracked the polish of his face. "I can still fix this. Come home. Let the child be raised properly. Let Cross return to his clubs and dock trash. I will bury the auction scandal. I will bury Elliot Graves. I will even bury the uglier questions about where you have been." Clara smiled. "You always did love burying women before they were dead." Silence. The kind that made old houses listen. Harlan's voice lowered. "You have no idea what men like Lucian Cross do to women like you." Clara stepped closer. "Yes, I do. Men like Lucian put locks on doors and call it protection." For a second, Harlan looked pleased. Then Clara finished. "But men like you remove the handle and call it love." His face went empty. That was when Clara knew she had cut him. In the ballroom, the first speech began. Applause rose beyond the door. The plan moved. Cole entered through the catering corridor carrying a silver tray. Nobody noticed him. Men with weapons were often invisible when dressed like service. Veronica Bell stood near the curator, one hand pressed to her chest, pretending to be dizzy. A security guard left his post to call for water. Another turned toward the commotion near the hall. Lucian walked alone into Harlan's private gallery. The room was locked by keypad and guarded by camera, but Cole had bought them 6 minutes and Veronica had given them the code from a memory she had carried for years. Lucian entered without breath, wasted without footsteps loud enough to betray him. Then he saw it. The original. The door he couldn't own. No photograph had prepared him. Serafina's blue was darker than memory, almost black at the corners. The painted woman stood with her hand raised, not weak, not waiting, but caught in the breath before defiance. The door had no handle. Of course it did not. Lucian stepped close. For years he had imagined taking this painting. He had imagined Harlan's face when the empty space appeared on his wall. He had imagined bringing Serafina home like victory could restore a dead woman's voice. But standing before the canvas, he felt no victory, only shame. Clara's words moved through him. You were ready to steal it like it could be yours. He opened the frame with careful hands. The back panel resisted, then loosened. Inside the wooden stretcher, wrapped in oil paper and sealed flat, lay a packet no thicker than a Bible. Lucian removed it. Photographs, letters, bank transfers, medical notes, names of doctors, dates, hotel rooms. A letter in Serafina's hand. The ink faded but fierce. He read only one line before his throat closed. If he owns the door, let the door remember me. His hand shook. Not much. Enough. The gallery door opened behind him. Clara stepped inside. Lucian looked up. She saw the packet in his hand and the look on his face. For one suspended second, neither spoke. Then she noticed the canvas propped near the wall, the copy he had brought. Her copy, not the one she expected. Lucian followed her gaze. How many lies are in this room? He asked. Clara closed the door behind her. Enough to get us out alive. You gave Cole a different canvas. I gave everyone what they wanted to believe they were carrying. His eyes held pain now, not anger. You did not trust me. No. The word was clean. It hurt because it was honest. Lucian looked at the painting, then back at her. I earned that. Clara had no answer ready for that either. Voices sounded outside the gallery. Harlan's voice. Lucian folded the packet into his coat. Clara stepped beside him, not behind him. The door opened. Harlan entered with 4 security men and the cold smile of a man who had expected betrayal and was delighted to punish it. My daughter was always clever, he said, but never as clever as she thought. The guards spread out. Lucian did not reach for his gun. That more than anything made Clara glance at him. Harlan's gaze dropped to Lucian's coat. Give me what belongs to me. Clara laughed softly. There was no humor in it, only disbelief sharpened into sound. You really cannot hear yourself. Harlan looked at her. This is family property. Serafina was not your family. She was my artist. Lucian moved then. 1 step. The guards reached beneath their jackets. Clara lifted her voice. No. Everyone stopped. Not because Clara was louder than guns, because the word carried something guns did not. Decision. She turned to Lucian first. If you kill for this, he gets what he wants. Another room, another body. Another story about men bleeding over a woman they refused to hear. Lucian's eyes burned. Harlan smiled behind her. Yes, Lucian. Listen to her. She was raised better than you. Clara turned on him. And you were raised rich enough to mistake silence for respect. His smile died. She lifted her phone. Harlan's gaze sharpened. "What have you done?" Clara opened the screen. Her thumb hovered over a sent folder already emptied into the world. "Your foundation board has the files. So does a federal investigator. So does the journalist who has been calling your office for 6 years. So do 3 museum directors who accepted your donations while pretending not to smell rot." Harlan went still. Lucian looked at her, then truly looked. Not at the woman he wanted, not at the painter he needed, at the strategist he had underestimated. Clara held Harlan's gaze. "You taught me something useful. Always make copies." For the first time in Clara's life, her father looked afraid, not terrified. Men like Harlan did not give fear that much honesty. But the blood left his face, and his mouth opened with no command ready. One of the guards shifted. Cole appeared in the doorway behind them with 2 of Lucian's men. "No one needs to be stupid," Cole said, calm as church bells. Harlan's eyes moved around the room, measuring loss. The painting. The packet. Clara. Lucian. The guards who suddenly looked less loyal than paid. Then he chose the only weapon he had left. Blood. He looked at Lucian. "She is a Whitmore. She will return to what made her. You can dress her in rebellion, but blood knows its house." Clara felt the old hook in those words. For years she had feared there was something in her that belonged to him. Some invisible inheritance, some polished cruelty waiting beneath her skin. Lucian looked at her. Old Lucian might have answered for her, claimed her, promised violence in her name. This Lucian simply asked, "Do you want to leave?" The room changed. Clara heard her own breath. No command, no grip, no bargain. A door. She looked at Harlan, then at the painting of Serafina hand lifted forever before a door without a handle. "Yes," Clara said. Lucian nodded. "Then we leave." Harlan stepped forward. "You walk out that door, Clara, and you lose everything." She stopped in front of him. "No," she said. "I already did that at 19. His eyes flinched. "This time I know what I'm taking with me." She walked past him. Lucian followed. Not leading, not pulling. Beside her. They moved through the corridor as chaos began to bloom behind the ballroom doors. Phones rang. Donors whispered. A woman gasped. Someone said Harlan's name in a tone that no longer sounded protected. In the main hall, photographers turned as Clara and Lucian descended the stairs together. Harlan appeared at the gallery entrance above them, pale beneath the chandelier light, surrounded by men who no longer knew whether serving him was safe. Outside, the night air struck Clara's face, cool and clean. Rain had begun again, fine and silver. At the bottom of the steps, Lucian stopped beside the car. For a moment, neither of them moved. Clara looked back once at the house where she had learned how small a girl could make herself and still be called difficult. Lucian looked back too, not at Harlan, at the window of the private gallery where his mother's painting still hung in the light. Clara saw the grief in him and did not touch it without permission. He opened the car door. She stood there soaked in mist, heart beating too hard, hands still steady. "Lucian." He looked at her. "I am not going back to Cross House tonight." Something crossed his face. Pain first, then understanding. "Where do you want to go?" She almost did not recognize the feeling that moved through her then. It was not safety. It was not love. It was the strange, frightening shape of choice. Clara looked toward the road beyond the gates, toward the dark line of trees, toward a city full of locked rooms and open streets. "Take me to Maddie," she said. Lucian nodded once. The car pulled away from Whitmore House with the blue painting still behind them, the stolen truth already out in the rain, and Clara Bennett sitting beside a dangerous man, who had finally learned to leave the door open. Lucian took Clara to Maddie. Not to Cross House first. Not to some hidden room where men could speak in low voices and turn a woman's life into strategy. He told the driver to circle through the Garden District twice, then called Cole and told him to bring Maddie and Mrs. Shaw to a small church on Britannia Street, where the front doors stayed unlocked until midnight. Clara did not thank him. Not yet. She sat in the back seat with her hands folded in her lap, watching rain slide down the window. Her dress was damp at the hem. Her hair had come loose from its pins. The city outside looked blurred and holy beneath the streetlights, all wet iron old brick and shadows moving behind lace curtains. Lucian sat beside her without touching her. That distance spoke louder than any apology. For so many days he had filled every room with command. His silence now had weight but not pressure. It made space. Clara did not know what to do with that kind of mercy from a man like him. When the car stopped outside the church, Clara saw Maddie before she opened the door. Her little girl stood beneath the porch light in Mrs. Shaw's coat, swallowed by wool, clutching both rabbits against her chest. Cole stood near the steps, one hand inside his jacket, eyes moving over every passing car. Mrs. Shaw stood behind Maddie with a scarf over her silver hair and worry pressed into every line of her face. Clara stepped out. Maddie saw her and ran. "Mama!" Clara caught her so hard the air left both of them. She sank to her knees on the wet sidewalk and held Maddie against her chest, one hand in her curls, the other flat between her small shoulders. "I'm here," Clara whispered. Maddie pulled back just enough to look at her face. "Did you see the sad lady?" Clara closed her eyes for half a second. "Yes. Did you tell her about the doorknob?" A laugh broke out of Clara, small and shaking. "I did." Maddie studied her serious as a judge. "Did she listen?" Clara looked past Maddie to Lucian, who had stepped out of the car but stayed near the curb coat dark with rain, hands empty at his sides. "I think maybe she did." Mrs. Shaw approached and touched Clara's shoulder. "You all right, child?" Clara did not lie. "No." Mrs. Shaw nodded. "That is a fair place to start." Cole came down one step and looked at Lucian. "Whitmore House is chaos. Donors are leaving. The board is calling lawyers. The story is already spreading." Lucian kept his eyes on Clara. "Good." Cole lowered his voice. "And the painting?" Lucian's gaze moved briefly toward the street, toward the direction of Whitmore House, toward the room where his mother's blue door still hung. "Leave it." Cole's eyebrows lifted, but he said nothing. Clara noticed. Lucian looked at her. "I promised you no conditions." The words sat between them in the rain. Clara stood with Maddie in her arms. "I need to leave Cross House. I know. I need my own place. I know. I need you not to decide that giving me money means you get to stand at the edge of my life and call it care." Lucian's face tightened, but he did not defend himself. "How do you want it handled?" The question was simple. It almost undid her. Clara shifted Maddie on her hip. "Through a lawyer. Legal transfer. Clean records. No hidden accounts. No guards unless I ask. No tracking my phone. No men outside my windows." Lucian nodded once. "Done." She searched his face for the catch. There was none she could see. "That easy no," he said, "but necessary." Maddie leaned her sleepy head against Clara's shoulder. "Can we go home?" Clara looked at the church doors. The rain, the black cars, the man who had saved her and trapped her and was now trying to learn the shape of an open hand. "Not the old one, Bug." Maddie yawned. "Can the new one have no gates?" Clara held her tighter. "Yes." Lucian looked away. Maybe because he understood that some promises were not his to make. 3 days later, Clara signed papers in a quiet office above a law firm that overlooked Lafayette Square. Lucian was not there. Only his attorney, Clara's attorney, and Cole, who stood in the hall and pretended not to be guarding anything. The transfer was clean. $5 million. Custody protection. A trust for Maddie that Clara alone controlled until Maddie was grown. Copies of Serafina's files. Copies of every scanned document from the gala. A written statement that Lucian Cross claimed no ownership, debt, favor, or obligation from Clara Bennett. Clara read that line 3 times. No ownership, no debt, no favor, no obligation. The attorney waited with a silver pen in his hand. Clara took out her own pen instead, cheap black plastic from the bottom of her purse. She signed as Clara Bennett. The name looked steady on the page. Outside, Cole walked her to the sidewalk. "Mr. Cross said to tell you the phone is clean. New number. No tracking." Clara took the envelope from him. And did he track the last one? Cole looked at her with the tired honesty of a man who had done many bad things and lied about fewer than expected. "Yes." Clara nodded. "Thank you for not lying. I prefer lying to people I dislike." She almost smiled. "Does he know where I'm going?" "No." "Do you?" "No." "Good." Cole glanced toward the street. For what it is worth, he has not asked. That did something to her, something she did not want to name. She opened the cab door. "Tell Mrs. Shaw Maddie misses her biscuits." Cole's mouth softened. "I will." Clara moved into a cottage near Lake Pontchartrain 5 days later. It was not grand. It leaned slightly to one side. The porch boards complained under every step. The kitchen sink groaned when the water ran too long. The front door stuck in humid weather and had to be lifted before it opened. But it opened. That mattered more than anything. The first morning there, Maddie ran barefoot from room to room, her laughter bouncing against walls that did not yet know them. "This one is mine. Yes. This window opens, yes. This closet has no monsters I checked. This house has no gates." Clara stood in the doorway of the tiny second bedroom holding a box of folded clothes. No gates. Maddie looked at her with solemn joy. "We are real rich now." Clara laughed. "Maybe just quiet rich. Can quiet rich have pancakes? Quiet rich can have pancakes." So Clara made pancakes on a stove that clicked for too long before lighting, and Maddie set both rabbits in chairs as guests. Sunlight filled the kitchen in bright squares. The lake wind pushed through the screens. For the first time in years, Clara ate breakfast without counting the cost of every bite. That afternoon, she turned the shed behind the cottage into a studio. There were spiders in the corners and dust on the windows. The floor was uneven. The roof had one suspicious stain that looked like future trouble. Clara loved it anyway. She unpacked her brushes, her pigments, her old sketchbooks, the expensive blue paint she had once hidden in a drawer. For a long while she stood before a blank canvas and felt nothing but fear. Not fear of Harlan, not fear of Lucian, fear of her own name. For years Clara had painted other people's wounds, other people's signatures, other people's legends. She had learned to disappear inside skill. A perfect copy was safe because it asked nothing true from her. A blank canvas asked everything. She touched the brush to paint, stopped, tried again. The first line came out wrong, too stiff, too careful. She scraped it off and laughed, though tears came with it. Maddie appeared in the doorway with peanut butter on her chin. "Is the painting being bad?" Clara looked at the ruined mark. "Yes." "Put it in time out." Clara laughed harder, then hand over her mouth, the sound strange in the dusty shed. "Maybe I should." Maddie came in and stood beside her. "What is it supposed to be?" Clara stared at the canvas. "I don't know yet." Maddie nodded like that made perfect sense. "Then it can be anything." News about Harlan Whitmore broke in pieces. First a headline about irregularities at the Whitmore Foundation, then a longer report about missing provenance records and coerced private sales, then the photographs. Then the medical notes. Then Serafina Cross had a name again. Mara Wynne was no longer a ghost attached to paintings owned by rich men. She became a woman in articles, in museum statements, in legal filings, in interviews with people who had been afraid for decades and had finally found a door cracked open. Veronica Bell testified. Elliot Graves was arrested at a private airport in Texas with 2 passports a watch that was not his, and enough cash to insult every honest poor person in the country. Harlan did not vanish. Men like Harlan did not vanish. They held press conferences. They denied. They hired lawyers with white hair and careful voices. They called themselves victims of a smear campaign. They spoke of legacy philanthropy, family values, and betrayal. But his face changed. Clara saw it once on television while Maddie slept against her side. Harlan stood before microphones, his jaw tight, his eyes bright with controlled rage. He looked smaller under public light. Not weak, never that, but exposed. Clara turned off the television before he finished speaking. She did not need to watch him fall every second to know the ground had opened beneath him. Lucian stayed away. No calls, no unexpected cars, no flowers, no notes. The first week, Clara distrusted the silence. The second week, she tested it. She changed routes to the grocery store. She left the cottage at odd hours. She drove near Cross House once and kept going without stopping. No one followed. One afternoon, Mrs. Shaw called from a number Clara recognized only because Cole had written it on a card. "I was told I am permitted to call if I do not ask where you live," Mrs. Shaw said. Clara smiled into the phone. "You were told correctly. How is the child Sticky? Loud? Happy? Good. And you?" Clara looked around the shed studio where 3 canvases leaned against the wall. "Learning." Mrs. Shaw was quiet for a moment. "He is learning too." Clara did not answer. Mrs. Shaw continued gently. "The room with Serafina's paintings is open now. Restorers came yesterday, real ones, museum people." He stood in the doorway and looked like someone had cut out his heart with a spoon, but he let them work. Clara closed her eyes. "That is good." "Yes, it is." A pause. "He has not asked me to tell you that. I know. He would be annoyed if he knew I had. I know that too." Mrs. Shaw sighed. "I am old enough to annoy dangerous men." Clara smiled. "Tell Maddie I miss her," Mrs. Shaw said. "She misses your biscuits." As she should. After the call, Clara went back to the canvas. She painted a room with no lock. Not a perfect room. The walls were uneven. One window was cracked. A chair sat in the corner with a sweater thrown over it. On the floor, a child's shoes waited beside a woman's bare feet. The painting was rough in places, alive in others, hers. She signed it before she could lose courage. Clara Bennett. The next morning, a crate arrived. The delivery truck came just after 9 when the lake wind was strong enough to bend the grass beside the road. Clara had been making coffee. Maddie was outside drawing chalk stars on the porch steps. The driver asked for Clara Bennett. She did not sign until she checked the paperwork 3 times. No sender listed. Only a storage company in Baton Rouge. The crate was tall, flat, and wrapped in weatherproof cloth. Clara knew before the crowbar opened the first seam. Her hands went cold. Inside, packed between layers of foam and brown paper, was the original painting. The door he couldn't own. Serafina's blue door filled the cottage living room with its old sorrow. Maddie stood beside Clara in silence. "That is the real sad lady?" she said. Clara nodded. "Yes. Why is she here, I don't know." Maddie stepped closer, studying the woman's lifted hand. "She still needs a doorknob." Clara sat down on the edge of the couch because her knees were not steady. The painting should have gone to evidence, to a museum, to Lucian, to history. Instead, it had arrived at her small cottage with no gates and a door that stuck but opened. Maybe Veronica had sent it. Maybe a frightened Whitmore employee had finally grown a conscience. Maybe Serafina's last witness had found the only woman who understood what it meant to stand before a door men had built without a handle. Clara called her attorney, then Veronica, then the investigator handling the Whitmore files. By sunset, she had arranged for the painting to be photographed, scanned, documented, and entered into the evidence record through proper channels. Only after all of that did she call Cole. He answered on the second ring. "Everything all right?" "No." A pause. "Is Maddie safe?" "Yes." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Then define no." Clara looked at the painting. "The door came to me." Cole said nothing for a full breath. Then, quietly, "I will tell him." "No," Clara said. "I will." She drove to Cross House the next evening with the painting secured in the back of a rented van, and Maddie asleep at Mrs. Alvarez's temporary care after Clara had explained only that Mama had one last grown-up errand. The gates opened when she arrived, but no one came out to rush her. That was new. Lucian stood on the front steps beneath the gas lanterns. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. No jacket, no armor except the kind a man carried inside his bones. When Clara stepped from the van, he did not move toward her. He waited. She looked at him across the wet gravel drive. "I brought something." His eyes went to the van. Something in his face changed before he saw the canvas. He knew. Cole helped carry the painting into the courtyard. Mrs. Shaw stood at the back door with one hand pressed to her mouth. No one spoke until the painting stood on an easel beneath the open evening sky. Lucian looked at it for a long time. The blue door glowed in the fading light. Clara stood a few feet away. "I did not bring it because you own it." Lucian's voice was rough. "I know. I brought it because she was your mother." His throat moved. For all his power, for all his violence, for all the men who would answer when he called Lucian Cross, looked helpless before that painted door. "My whole life," he said, "I thought if I got it back, I could get some part of her back too." Clara said nothing. He stepped closer to the canvas. "I was wrong." The words seemed to cost him. "I was going to hang it in my house, tell myself I rescued it, tell myself I was not like him." He looked at Clara. "But I would have kept her trapped in the same door." Clara's chest tightened. "It has been documented, scanned, preserved for the investigation. Her name is attached now. Not Harlan's, not yours." Lucian nodded. The courtyard had grown dim. Cole brought out a metal basin used for burning old garden brush. "Mrs." Shaw placed a folder on the stone table beside it. Photographs, digital archive records, legal receipts, proof that Serafina's voice would not vanish with the canvas. Lucian looked at Clara. "Stay." It was only one word. Still, Clara heard the difference. He was not asking her to stay in his house. He was asking her to stand with him while he let go. "Yes," she said. Cole and Mrs. Shaw withdrew to the edge of the courtyard. Lucian lifted the painting himself. For a second, his hands held the frame the way someone might hold a body. Then he placed it inside the basin. Clara did not touch him. She did not tell him he was doing the right thing. She did not make grief tidy for him. Lucian struck a match. The flame shook once in the evening air. He looked at the painted woman. His mother. The artist. The witness. The prisoner. The one who had turned a door into a record because nobody had listened to her voice. "Goodbye, Mama," he whispered. He dropped the match. Fire caught the lower corner slowly, then climbed. The blue darkened. The gold curled. The woman's lifted hand disappeared last. Lucian stood still while it burned. His eyes shone, but he did not look away. Clara stood beside him, not behind, not in front, close enough to be there and far enough to let the choice remain his. When the flames lowered to embers, Mrs. Shaw wiped her face and went inside without speaking. Cole cleared his throat once, then followed. The courtyard belonged to Clara Lucian, and the quiet ash of a door no man could own anymore. Lucian turned to her. "I am sorry." Clara looked at him. "For which part?" His mouth tightened with a humorless breath. "All of it." "That is too easy." "Yes." He stepped back, giving her space even in apology. "I am sorry I used fear and called it protection. I am sorry I made decisions around you instead of asking you. I am sorry I thought keeping you alive was the same as honoring your life." Clara felt the words enter carefully like guests who knew they might not be welcome. "And Maddie." His eyes lowered. "I am sorry I spoke of her as leverage before I understood she was your heart walking outside your body." Clara looked away because that one hurt in the place where truth lived. The night insects hummed beyond the courtyard wall. Somewhere far off, traffic moved along St. Charles Avenue. New Orleans kept breathing shameless and beautiful. Lucian said, "I have no right to ask you for anything." "No," Clara said. "You do not." He nodded. She looked back at him. "But you can ask." His eyes lifted. For the first time since she had known him, Lucian Cross looked afraid of a woman's answer. "Dinner," he said. "Not tonight if you do not want. Not here if you do not want. No driver. No guards at the table. Just dinner." Clara studied him. The old Lucian would have made the room ready before asking, would have arranged the plates, the wine, the root. The answer. This one stood in the ash of his mother's painting and offered a question with no weapon behind it. "I have conditions." A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "I assumed." "My name stays mine." "Yes." "My money stays mine." "Yes." "My studio stays mine." "Yes." Maddie is never used in any negotiation, threat, plan, warning, or promise. "Yes." "No locked gates." "Yes." "No guards unless I ask." "Yes." "No secrets that decide my life." He paused. Not because he disagreed, because that one would be hard. Then he said, "Yes. And when I say no, the conversation ends." Lucian looked at her as if the words were law and mercy at the same time. "Yes." Clara took one step closer. "I will not be owned, Lucian." "I know." "No," she said softly. "You are learning." He accepted the correction. "I am learning." The honesty of that moved through her more deeply than any perfect promise could have. Perfect promises had trapped women in beautiful houses for generations. Learning left room for failure, repair, and choice. Lucian's voice lowered. "I do not want to own you." Clara waited. "I want to be chosen by you." The words settled in the courtyard warm against the cooling ash. Clara looked at the man before her, the dangerous man, the grieving son, the one who had held too tightly because he did not know how else to keep from losing. She saw the harm. She saw the effort. She saw the space he was making where once there had only been walls. She stepped closer by her own will. When she kissed him, he did not take. He received. His hands stayed at his sides until she touched his wrist and brought one to her waist. Even then, his hold was careful open, ready to let go. The kiss tasted like smoke rain and something not yet safe enough to name as peace, but close. Months later, Clara Bennett opened her first small gallery show in New Orleans. Not in a grand museum, not in a room bought by men trying to polish their guilt. It was a narrow gallery on Julia Street with brick walls, warm lights, and windows that looked out onto the evening crowd. The show was called Rooms Without Locks. People came because of the scandal at first. They wanted to see Harlan Whitmore's runaway daughter. They wanted gossip dressed as culture. They wanted to stand near pain without being responsible for it. Then they saw the paintings. A kitchen with sunlight on 2 plates. A child's shoes beside an open window. A woman asleep in a chair with a brush still in her hand. A room with no door at all, only curtains lifting in wind. And at the back of the gallery, one large canvas. A woman and a little girl stood before a blue door. This time the door was open. Light spilled through so brightly the viewer could not see what waited on the other side. The title card beneath it read, "The door I opened myself." Clara stood near the entrance in a black dress she owned outright. Maddie moved through the room in a purple dress, proudly telling strangers which paintings had snacks hidden in them if they looked hard enough. Mrs. Shaw cried twice and denied both times. Cole stood near the door in a suit and scared away anyone who looked too much like a reporter with bad intentions. Lucian arrived last. No entourage, no black coat like a storm cloud. Just Lucian carrying a small bouquet of white magnolias wrapped in brown paper. He stopped at the threshold. Clara saw him notice the open door. Not the painted one. The real one. The gallery door behind him standing wide to the street. He looked at Clara across the room. She smiled. Maddie ran to him and took his hand without asking anyone for permission. "Funeral man. That one's not sad." Lucian looked down at her, then back at the painting. "No," he said. Clara came to stand beside them. Maddie leaned against his arm. "That one got out." Clara looked at the blue door open to the light, then at her daughter, then at Lucian standing beside them with his hand open and empty until Maddie chose to fill it. "Yes," Clara said. "She did."